Good morning from European Chemicals Agency Helsinki. My name is Salla Günther and I would like to welcome you all in the second webinar about the registration process. Today we will talk about technical completeness check, invoicing and payment. Before we will begin with the presentations, I will give you some practical information about the WebEx tool and about interaction during and after this event. Audio for each event will be available directly through the Event Center tool. Make sure the sounds are enabled on your computer. For optimal sound quality, use headphones. As attendees join the event, they will be connected to the audio broadcast. The audio broadcasting panel, where attendees can control audio volume, opens automatically. Communication with panelists takes place through the questions and answer panel. If you are not connected to the audio broadcast, you can connect to it by selecting Communicate from the top menu and Join Audio Broadcast. The interaction during this event will take place through the Q&A panel. You may see the panelists and presenters listed on top of your screens. If you have any questions, you may write them in the Q&A box. In the drop-down menu, select All Panelists, then click Send, and our panelists will receive your question. You may start sending your questions already now until 12:40 Helsinki time. ECHA Helpdesk and ECHA experts will respond to your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or they may decide to phone you after the webinar. If your question requires further consultation and cannot be answered during the webinar, we will get back to you via the formal ECHA Helpdesk route. It is important to remember that if you log a question, please monitor your Q&A panel and remain logged in until you have received an answer to your question. The webinar will remain open until 2 o'clock Helsinki time. If we decide that your question is best handled by telephone, we will inform you about this via the Q&A panel. We will suggest you a time slot and ask you to confirm your phone number to be able to contact you. In case you need any further support on ECHA's IT tools or advice on REACH and CLB applications, you are welcome to contact us by the Helpdesk contact form. After you have received the acknowledgement of receipt, you will be answered within 15 working days. And finally, here you may see today's program. My colleague Terhi Rantala will start the presentations by giving you a detailed overview of technical completeness check. Then Sara Sumiala will continue on the same topic, focusing on the use of TCC plugin, followed by Raluca Pika, who will explain to you how to avoid unexpected fees in your registration. We will then have a short break at 11:50. We will be back at 12:05 and Martin Hayas will continue the invoicing topic with a presentation related to invoice information in REACH IT. The last presentation concerns best practice for paying ECHA invoices and will be given by John Wickham. And before closing, we will make a short summary of topics presented. So I will now give the floor to our first presenter, Terhi.
Thank you, Salla. Good morning, everybody. My name is Terhi Rantala, and I am working in the dossier submission and dissemination unit in ECHA. In the next presentation, I'm going to give you an overview of the technical completeness check. First, I will start with a brief introduction. Then, I will go through the main information requirements in order to pass the technical completeness check. I am also going to talk about how the whole TCC process looks like. And finally, excuse me, I would like to give you the links to the guidance material that will help you in the registration process. In the previous webinars, you have heard about how to create a dossier in Euclid 5 and how to submit the dossier to ECHA via ReachIT. There was also a webinar explaining the business rules check. In our current presentation, we are focusing on the technical completeness check, or so-called TCC. On this slide, you can see that the TCC follows immediately after the business rules check. You can also see that invoicing and TCC are two parallel processes. It means that you will receive a registration number only after your dossier has successfully passed TCC and the invoice has been paid on time. The completeness check is defined in the REACH regulation in Article 20, Part 2. It is composed by two different parts, which are the technical completeness check and the financial completeness check. In the TCC step, ECHA checks that all the elements required by REACH have been provided inside the Euclid dossier. There is no assessment of the content at this stage yet. Therefore, if your dossier is considered technically complete, it does not mean it is compliant by its content. The evaluation of the information provided will take place in a later stage, after you have received your registration number. Then let's move on to the information requirements in order to pass the TCC. The minimum information requirements are detailed in the REACH regulation in its different annexes. The first annex relevant is Annex 7, which, for instance, includes the identity of the registrant and of the substance, and the information about the classification and labeling. The information required by Annexes 7 to 10 depends on the tonnage band of the substance to be registered. The higher the tonnage band is, the more studies are requested. Finally, if your dossier is more than 10 tons per year, you also need to include a chemical safety report, CSR. On the right side of the slide, you can see how all these different requirements translate into the Euclid 5 section 3. How to know what information is required to be filled in? Once the substance dataset is opened in Euclid 5, you can select a specific view mode by clicking on the small black arrow indicated on this slide. The view mode corresponds to the various dossier types and tonnage bands. Once the desired view mode is selected in the drop-down list, then the section tree changes in such a way that the red symbols indicate the mandatory sections and the green symbols indicate the optional sections. What are the information requirements in a joint submission? In a joint submission, the lead has to provide all the information required for the highest tonnage band within the joint submission. The members, on the other hand, have to provide only limited information, such as the identification of the company and the substance, and information on the manufacturer and uses. Any other information included in the member dossier will be regarded as an opt-out from the joint submission. How does this information translate into Euclid 5? There are 3 different types of information provided in a joint submission. There is the private data that is individual for each registrant and therefore needs to be provided both by the lead and by each member. On this slide, these Euclid sections are marked in red. Then there is the data that should be provided only by the lead unless the member decides to opt out for some reason. On the current slide, these sections are marked in green. And finally, the information in Euclid sections 11 and 13 can be provided either by the lead for all the members or individually by each member separately. This needs to be decided within the sieve. In case this information is provided by the lead on behalf of the members, then it needs to be indicated in the dossier header while creating the dossier by ticking the relevant tick boxes. Now I will explain you in detail how the technical completeness check process looks like. Here you have the general overview of the submission pipeline process. First of all, it is important to know that the business rules check step has to be passed in order to ECHA accept your dossier for further processing. Once your dossier is accepted for processing, it will undergo the technical completeness check and at the same time an invoice will be issued. ECHA will perform the technical completeness check within 3 weeks from receiving your dossier. But I would like to highlight that there is an exception to this rule. If your dossier is submitted during the last 2 months before the relevant registration deadline, then the technical completeness check will take place within 3 months of that deadline. In other words, it takes longer time to receive the decision. This exception concerns only the deadline-relevant dossiers. If your dossier is considered incomplete, then ECHA sends you a request for further information and provides you with the detailed list of missing information. In addition, this letter also includes the deadline for the resubmission and instructions on how to proceed. Therefore, please regularly check your ECHA mailbox. You might also expect a phone call from ECHA, since we are trying to provide additional assistance to the companies who have failed their initial submissions and might need help with correcting the errors in their dossier. Please note that you can only make a maximum of 2 submissions of a registration dossier within a technical completeness check cycle. If also the second submission is incomplete, or you fail to resubmit your registration dossier by the resubmission deadline, then ECHA will reject your registration update. Any potential fees paid in relation to this dossier will not be reimbursed. In case you have failed TCC, it is necessary to create a new dossier containing all the information initially submitted, as well as the missing information that was listed in the TCC letter. You must indicate in the dossier header that the submission is an update and enter the submission number of the dossier that failed in the indicated field. As a next step, the tick box "Further to a request, decision from regulatory body" needs to be selected, and the communication number of the TCC letter must be entered in the designated field. Both the submission number and the communication number can be found in the TCC letter header that you received from ECHA. In addition, you are strongly advised to use the TCC plugin on your dossier before you submit it to ECHA. You will hear the details about the TCC plugin in our next presentation in a few minutes. If your dossier is considered complete and the invoice has been paid on time, then you will receive a decision to your ECHA mailbox confirming the successful registration. Then let's move on to the useful links. For more information on how to complete a technical dossier, please have a look at the Data Submission Manual number 5, which is available on the ECHA website. In addition, if you have any concerns about anything related to the technical completeness check, do not hesitate to contact the ECHA help desk. We will be happy to help you. As we are approaching the end of this presentation, I would like to highlight the key messages of the technical completeness check process. Make sure that all the required information is included in your Euclid 5 dossier. Secondly, in case of a joint submission, the lead dossier must include all the information required for the highest tonnage band of the joint submission. The member dossier only needs limited amounts of data. And finally, it is important to use the TCC plugin before submitting your dossier to ECHA in order to avoid any TCC failures. Thank you for your attention. I will now give the floor to my colleague Saara Sumiala, who will talk about the TCC plugin.
Thank you, Terhi. Good morning. My name is Saara Sumiala, and I work here in ECHA in the Dossier Submission and Dissemination Unit. During the next 10 minutes, I'm going to explain why you should get the TCC plugin, where you can download it, and if you already have it, how you can make sure that you're using the latest version. And then I'm going to go through how you can launch the TCC plugin, how to interpret the TCC plugin results, and in the end, I would like to give you the links where you can get additional support. We'll start with why you need the TCC plugin. As Terhi already mentioned in her presentation, before you get the registration number, you need to pass the technical completeness check and the financial completeness check. The TCC plugin enables you to check the technical completeness check of the dossier before sending it to us. And the TCC plugin simulates the technical completeness check that we carry out here in ECHA. The TCC plugin checks most of the business rules on the dossier. If you wonder why we didn't build the a plugin which will check all the business rules. That is because the business rules need the information which is stored in the Reach IT. And if you already have the TCC plugin, how you can make sure Next we're going to go through where you can get this wonderful tool. You can download it from the Euclid 5 homepage. There we have a download section, and from there you can get the latest version of all our Euclid 5 related plugins. There you can click the download the installation package, and you get step-by-step instructions how to install the plugin. If you want more guidance on how to do the installation, our help desk has prepared a short video to guide you through it. I have included the link to that Windows Media Player video to the useful slide in my presentation. If you already have the plugin, how you can make sure that you are using the latest version of it? When running the TCC plugin, there is a version checker at the bottom of the window. If the plugin is up to date, the following status is displayed. Current plugin is up to date. If you get this new plugin available message, then the new TCC plugin should be downloaded from the Euclid 5 webpage. In this case, the previous one needs to be removed and the new one installed. The version checker is not working if the Euclid is not connected to the internet. Then you get the version check failed message. In that case, compare the version numbers that you get in the step 3 of the TCC plugin wizard with the ones listed on the download page of the TCC plugin on the Euclid 5 homepage. At the moment, the current business rule version is 2.2.8 and Completeness Check rule version is 2.2.7. Other reason that you might get the version check failure message is that the plugin was only partially installed. You can get more information if you have that problem on the Euclid 5 homepage's frequently asked questions section. Then how you can launch the TCC plugin. After you have installed the plugin, you have several options where to use it from. In the Euclid 5 main page, you have 3 TCC plugin icons. If you wish to launch the TCC plugin from these icons, you have to, in the first step in the wizard, to choose the document to be checked by clicking the yellow chain icon. This will open a query window where it will be possible to select either a dossier or a substance to be checked. In my opinion, a little bit easier way to use the TCC plugin is if you want to work on the substance, you click Update Substance, and from the query window, select the substance you want to check by right-clicking it and then select Run TCC. And you can check the final dossier in the same way. Go to View Dossier, select correct dossier from the query window, right-click it, and select Run TCC tool. I would like to remind you that before creating the dossier, run the TCC tool to the substance dataset. It is also strongly recommended to run the TCC plugin on the final dossier prior submitting it in Reach IT. If you have failures in the dossier, it is not possible to correct them in the dossier. Instead, you have to go back to the substance dataset, correct the failures, and then create a new dossier. And next, how to interpret the results table. In the step 3 of the TCC wizard, the outcome of the performed check is displayed. the default setting is that it is showing both the TCC and business rule failures and warnings. When the TCC plugin is run on dossier or substance dataset, there are several types of failures. You can have, in the registration dossiers, you have the TCC rules and the business rules. The substance identity rules relate only to inquiry dossiers. The TCC failures correspond to technical completeness check that we carry out here in ECHA. So if you submit your dossier without correcting the failures in the TCC plugin, your dossier will be considered incomplete and will fail the technical completeness check. TCC warnings point to the same some inconsistencies in your dossier. You are advised to include all the relevant information requested in the message. So the warnings do not constitute a failure at the technical completeness check level that we carry out here in ECHA. The business rule failures in the plugin are associated with the business rule step failure in Reach IT. If you submit a dossier without correcting the issue mentioned in the message, your dossier will fail the business rule check and will not be accepted for further processing. And if you have business rule warning, that does directly translate in the business rule failure in Reach IT, but it indicates some information is missing from the dossier that should be in there. So in short, if you have failure in your results table, the dossier is going to fail in Reach IT. If you have warning, it's not going to fail, but we really recommend you to correct the warning because some information is missing that we would like to have. And then to the color codes. The rows highlighted in yellow in the TCC results table indicate the Euclid 5 sections that give rise to the failure. And the grey and the white rows indicate the fields of the substance or dossier that need to be filled into the correct failure. If a mandatory Euclid 5 section is completely missing from your substance or your dossier, you only get the yellow message. When there are no TCC failures that the TCC plugin could found, the dossier, in the results table, you get these two messages. See the screenshot. And they are only warnings, so your dossier is not going to fail in our technical completeness check. And in the end, we are going to see where you can get more support. On the Euclid 5 website, you can find, for instance, the support section. It includes the link to TCC plugin user manual and to our help desk. And here I have included all the links that I have mentioned in this presentation. And I would also like to highlight the following messages. Please get the TCC plugin. Make sure that you're having the latest version. Before you create the dossier, run the TCC plugin on the substance dataset. And run the TCC plugin on the final dossier before sending it to us. And correct all the failures indicated in the TCC plugin. Thank you for your attention. And next I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, Raluca.
Thank you, Sara. Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending this webinar. My name is Raluca Pica, and today we'll be giving you some advice on how to avoid unexpected fees in your registration. I will focus on the following topics. First of all, I will give you some key information which will be useful when preparing your Euclid dossier. I will also show you how to use the fee calculation plugin for checking the dossiers before submitting them to ECHA. Then we will continue with the submission of your dossier in Reach IT and some company information that is worthwhile checking before submitting your registration. Before proceeding any further, I would like to list the parameters which will determine the amount of your registration fee. These are the type of registration, that could be non-intermediate, intermediate, or a combination of those. The tonnage band, company size, if it is a joint or an individual submission, if it is an initial dossier or an update, and if you have any confidentiality claims included in your dossier. In order to get the right fee for your registration, it is very important to indicate correctly the tonnage band. Indicating the correct tonnage band depends on the Euclid 5 template and on the indication of the tonnage band in your dossier. In Euclid 5, once you have finished collecting all the information for your substance dataset, you have to create the dossier by using the dossier creation wizard and making sure that you select the correct template. Now we will see some examples of how to indicate the tonnage band for different types of submissions. If you are the lead registrant of a joint submission, the tonnage band of the joint submission will be determined by the dossier template that you choose when creating the dossier. See the first screenshot. However, your own tonnage band will be indicated in the dossier header as shown in the second screenshot. This is the tonnage band that will determine the fee shown in your invoice. If you are a member of a joint submission, when creating your dossier, you have to choose either the member general case or the member intermediate dossier template. Then you will indicate your tonnage band in the dossier header, as you can see in the second screenshot. This will be the basis for your invoice. Next example is for an individual submission. In these cases, the fee will be determined both by the dossier template, as seen in the first screenshot, and by the dossier header in case of combinations of additional registrations such as on-site and transported intermediates. For dossiers with tonnage band between 1 and 10 tons per year, you can claim the fee waiver. If the fee waiver is claimed, no fee will be charged. Under Article 74.2 of the REACH regulation, the fee waiver can be claimed only if the registration dossier contains the full information in Annex 7. Remember to tick the fee waiver box at step 6 of the dossier creation wizard, also when you make an update to your dossier. Before you submit your dossier, it is worth simulating the fee you will be charged by using the fee calculation plugin. By doing this, you might realize that you have chosen the wrong tonnage band or selected incorrect confidentiality claims that you were not planning to flag as confidential. You can find the fee calculation plugin in the link provided on the slide. Please remember that this is just an estimate and that the fee from the invoice issued by ECHA for your submission is considered to be the only valid one. Now let's see a few examples on how to use the fee calculation plugin. In the first example, we have an initial registration of a lead registrant of a joint submission. Find your dossier in Euclid 5, then right-click on it to open the menu and choose the Calculate Fee option. You will choose the document to check and click on Next. At this point, you will provide your company size, as this information is not indicated anywhere in your Euclid 5 dossier. Finally, the total amount will be displayed. Next example shows how to use the fee calculation plugin for a member dossier. If you are a member of a joint submission, when using the plugin, you might get one of the 3 extra indicators that you will have to fill in accordingly. The indicators will appear or not depending on the data you included in your dossier. 2 of the indicators can be seen in the slide: the hazardous substance indicator and the safety datasheet indicator. If your substance is hazardous, or if the safety datasheet is required, please indicate it, as this information is not included in your Euclid 5 dossier. The third indicator is the one for the PBT-VPVB. Is your substance a PBT-VPVB substance? If yes, please indicate it by ticking the box. If you are a member of a joint submission, this information is not included in your dossier, but in the dossier submitted by the lead of the joint submission. This is why you have to indicate this information yourself. Our last example is for situations when you are submitting an update dossier for a substance that is already registered. In these cases, you will have to indicate the highest tonnage band for the standard registration fee that you have previously paid, and if you have previously paid for on-site or transported isolated intermediates. ECHA will not charge for what you have already paid in the past. Now I will focus on the submission of the dossier in ReachIT. Perhaps you are now about to submit your dossier in ReachIT. Don't do it yet. There are still some information that you need to check in your ReachIT account before you proceed with the submission of your dossier. Check that your company size is correct in ReachIT. Only SMEs are entitled to a discount on their registration fee. Enterprises qualify as micro, small and medium sized if they fulfill the criteria laid down in the European Commission recommendation of 2003, number 361. When indicating your company size, bear in mind that the ownership, voting rights, and relationship with other companies contribute to determining the correct company size. Only representatives should make sure that the registration is in line with the size of the company they represent. There is some information for the SMEs in the first link, and in case you want to know the size of your company, please try the electronic SME test provided by the European Commission. This can be reached by following the second link. Here you can see a snapshot of the web page where you can take the test. Follow the SME test link. Once you know your correct company size, you can either confirm or update it in ReachIT. On the left-hand side menu, choose Company Information and View, and then check that your company size is correct. If it is not, please update the information. ECHA will verify that you have declared the correct company size. It is also important to check that your VAT number is correct, as it will be shown on the invoice. Your finance department might not pay the invoice in case the VAT number is incorrect. You should also make sure that your billing organization name and billing address are correct in ReachIT. Select the Billing Information tab to find the relevant information and update them if necessary. After you have performed all these checks, you are ready to submit your dossier via ReachIT by choosing the correct submission type for your registration. One last important information. You can add a purchase order reference number or wording to your invoice by filling in the purchase order field. This information will appear on the invoice. To summarize, you should carry out this 5-minute check before submitting your dossier. Check that the tonnage band is correct. Run the fee calculation plugin in Euclid 5. Check that the company size is correct in ReachIT. Check that the VAT number is also correct. And finally, make sure that your billing organization name and billing address are correct as well. If you do all these checks before submitting your dossier, you will get a correct invoice and a correct registration fee. That was all from my side. Thank you everybody for your attention. And now we go back to Sala.
Thank you very much, Raluca. I see that we are a little bit ahead with the agenda, but let's have a short break now, about 20 minutes, and please remember to be back 12:05.
Thank you, Sala, for giving me a floor. I'm Martin Hayash, and I'm going to present you the presentation with the title Invoice Information in ReachIT. First of all, let me give you a short intro into the registration pipeline. Let's focus on the left side of the slide. The registrant is going to upload the registration dossier to ReachIT. After upload, the dossier has to be pre-processed. It is important to note that if your substance is subject of the second registration deadline, the pre-processing has to be successfully completed before 31st of May 2013. Therefore, I recommend you to submit your dossier early. Also, I would like to mention that the processing steps that include, for instance, financial completeness check and technical completeness check can take place after 31st of May 2013. Now, let me introduce the content of this presentation. I'm going to speak about your message box in ReachIT. Second part of the presentation is dedicated to the invoices, their layouts, and what are the information you can find in. Also, I shortly explained to you that in your message box you may find other types of the messages that are related to the invoices, such as due date reminders and credit notes. At the end of the presentation, I try to focus your attention on the importance of the submission report and its relevance to your invoice. So move on to your message box in ReachIT. All ReachIT users have their own message box from where they can access internal messages sent by ECHA. The type of the messages sent by ReachIT concerns the invoices, credit notes, submission reports, for instance. How you can access your ReachIT message box? You can easily do this by signing into ReachIT as you usually do and clicking on the message box on the left-hand side and then on View My Messages. To view the content of message, click on the link Show in the red circle in the Details column. The first time a new message is open, its read property in the third column will be changed from No to Yes. It is important to say that read status of a message is also visible to ECHA, who will rely on it to ensure the registrant has read important communications. In the fourth column there is information about the subject of the message. You can find the information about the date of the message in the fifth column. You can also configure your message box to receive email notifications in your usual email box, alerting you a new ReachIT internal message. Upon receipt of such an email, you have to connect to ReachIT and check your internal messages in the message box. This slide depicts the messages received by the registrant that is related to the invoicing activities. The messages, amongst others, concern to invoices, reminders, and credit notes. On the slides, those messages are highlighted in red boxes. As soon as an invoice is opened by ECHA, a message is sent to the registrant message box informing that an invoice has been issued. The invoice can be downloaded by clicking in the link provided in the message. On the slide, downloading link is highlighted in red circle. In case the invoice has not been paid by the registrant before due date, another message, invoice reminder, will be sent to the registrant's message box. If ECHA cancels an invoice and corresponding credit note is generated, a message will be sent to the registrant's message box informing that an invoice has been cancelled and that the corresponding credit note is available for download. Invoice management in ReachIT. How to access your ReachIT account allows you sorting and viewing the invoices. How you can access your invoicing folder. You can easily do this by signing into ReachIT as you usually do and clicking on Invoicing on the left-hand side and then on Download. Afterwards, the list of the invoices appears and you can sort them by ascending and descending order. You can also select the individual invoice and download it in PDF format by clicking the radio button in the left column. Also, it is possible to sort and to view the invoice reminders and credit notes. Now, the invoice is downloaded. How does it look like? You can see the invoice in the blue box. What information is in the invoice? In general, you may find in your invoice the information about your company and the relevant information from your submission. Therefore, ECHA is unable to modify any information in the invoice issued. All invoices are sent by ECHA electronically to the registrant's Reach IT account. This slide depicts the information about the company such as a billing address, company UID, DUNS number and VAT number in red boxes. This slide depicts the details of the chargeable services. This invoice shows the registration fee for the non-SME company that individually submitted the registration dossier for the tonnage band 1 to 10 tons. In addition, in the invoice there is one request of confidentiality for a study summary. In the upper part of the invoice you can find the date when the invoice was sent to you by ECHA. In the middle part of the invoice there is a table with column on the left side. In this column you can find the information about the submission date. That means that the date when dossier successfully passed the business rules. The due date is in the bottom red box, and it is important to note that the payment has to be made till due date. If not, ECHA will set a second deadline for payment. This extended payment due date is usually up to 60 calendar days from the initial payment due date. If payment is not made by the extended due date, the registration will be rejected. Payments for registrations should be made to Pohjola Bank as it is depicted in the red box. According to Article 70 of the REACH fee regulation, every payment must indicate the invoicing number. Thus, in your payment, you should indicate only the payment reference, which is the invoice number. ECHA sends an invoice reminder once the due date of the invoice has passed. The reminder contains an extended due date, which is 60 days. If you receive a reminder but you have already paid the invoice, you can ignore the reminder. If payment is not made by the extended due date, the registration will be rejected. If invoice is cancelled, only exceptional cases, you will receive a credit note for the whole amount and, if needed, a replacement invoice. Each credit note has its unique number and contains the number of the credited invoice. How can I find that ECHA received your payment? If payment was received by ECHA, then the status of the technical completeness check is succeeded in the submission report. Usually it takes 6 days to receive and confirm the payment. I would like to point out that ECHA is not in the position to reimburse any payments made in case the registration dossier is rejected, or if the payment is made after the extended due date. At the end of my presentation, I recommend you to keep your eye to your Reach IT message box for the invoices and related messages, and pay attention to due dates in the invoices and in the invoice reminders. Also, it is important to note that if your substance is subject of the second registration deadline, the pre-processing has to be successfully completed before 31st of May 2013. Therefore, I recommend you to submit your dossier early. Also, it is important to say that once ECHA considers the dossier to be technically complete and the fee payment has been received within the deadline set, you will receive your registration number. For further information, please familiarize yourself with Industry User Manual Part 8 and with Data Submission Manuals 5 and 16. These manuals are accessible on the ECHA webpage. And this is end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I would like to give the floor to my colleague John.
Thank you, Martin. My name is John Wickham, and I am responsible for ECHA's accounting sector. My team manages the payments received from the registrants. I will therefore explain what to keep in mind when you pay the ECHA invoice in order to allow us to deal with your payment as quickly as possible and preferably automatically. I would like to show you that the way your payments are sent to ECHA has an influence on the efficiency of achieving your registration's financial completeness. So first, I will go through the best practices. After that, I will explain the consequences of incomplete payment information and in turn, the consequences of underpayment of invoices. I will also explain ECHA's tax exemption status, and at the end, I will remind you of the way to contact us regarding payments and invoices. I hope that amongst the webinar participants there are also people who directly deal with the accounting and payment of ECHA's invoices for your company. If that is not the case, the content of this webinar will later be available on ECHA's website. Payment best practices. As we deal with substantial volumes of transactions, it is important that standard transactions are dealt with as automatically as possible. The Reach IT system is able to automatically match your payment with your open invoice if all the following 3 criteria are met. Correct reference number, the exact amount, and a single payment. These 3 criteria enable Reach IT to automatically match your payment with the open invoice. Now, let's go through each of these 3 important criteria in more detail. Correct reference number. You must always indicate the payment reference number in the payment message. The reference number is the same as the invoice number. It has 8 digits. Indicating this number is sufficient. Please try to avoid indicating any information other than the invoice number in the payment message. In particular, any internal numbers of your entity should be avoided if possible. Make sure you indicate the correct and complete reference number. Please do not abbreviate the number, as abbreviations cannot be dealt with automatically. Number 2, the exact amount. Pay the exact amount of the invoice. This may sound obvious, but we do get both underpayments and overpayments. I will come back to this issue later. Number 3, single payments. Make a separate payment for each invoice. One invoice should be paid per payment transaction. This is the fastest track to the financial completeness of your submission. If you follow all these 3 criteria, Reach IT will automatically match your payment with your open invoice. Multiple invoice payments. Let us still remain on the topic of sending single as opposed to multiple invoice payments. Some companies have informed us that their financial system cannot send single payments. We can only accept this if certain conditions are met. To enable ECHA to deal with a multi-invoice payment within a reasonable number of days, you should adhere to one of the following alternatives. Indicate all complete invoice reference numbers in the payment message, or refer to a payment advice in the payment message and send the payment advice to the email address payments@echa.europa.eu with no further delay. It would be best if you sent the payment advice in PDF format. In the payment advice, please indicate the company name, the date of payment, all the paid invoice numbers, the total amount paid, Please note that the manual processing of multiple invoice payments takes more time than automatic processing of single invoice payments. Now to the bank transfer method itself. The preferred payment method is a SEPA credit transfer. For SEPA payments, it is obligatory to choose shared costs for the bank charges. This means that the registrant pays their bank charges and ECHA pays its own bank charges. By sending a SEPA payment with shared cost, it is guaranteed that ECHA receives the full payment without any direct deduction of bank charges from the amount itself, as this is a basic SEPA rule. Please note that a standard SEPA payment takes 3 days from bank to bank. ECHA has no influence over that. We are of course aware that SEPA has not been fully implemented everywhere yet. We also have payments coming from outside the SEPA zone. Therefore, if your bank is not able to send a SEPA payment, you must ensure that all sending bank charges are paid by you so that the payment is received in full by ECHA. If we receive an incomplete payment, we will contact you. Useful for the registrants to know is that ECHA's bank never deducts any bank charges directly from the payment. Please also note that ECHA does not accept any cheques, cash or credit card payments. We will always return these types of payment to the payer and ask them to pay by bank transfer instead. So what are the consequences of not following the best practices for payments? Or please let me first mention some examples of incomplete payment information. Missing invoice number in the payment message field. Incorrect invoice number, maybe an old one which means double payment or just a typing mistake. Not all paid invoice numbers mentioned if you sent a multiple invoice payment and no payment advice has been sent to ECHA, or underpayment. These were some examples. Now to the consequences. ECHA needs to start identifying the payer and contacting them for clarifications through Reach IT messaging, direct email or follow-up via telephone calls. Therefore, it is important that registrants' contact information on Reach IT is current and regularly updated. Then we have to wait for clarifications from the payer, which delays the processing of payment further. Because of this, the whole registration process is delayed. And finally, the registrant will have to wait longer for the registration number and registration decision than may be foreseen by their Reach manager. Next, to the treatment of underpayments and payments after the extended deadline date. This arises whereby a registrant has made a partial payment and the extended due date for payment has passed, or a full payment against an invoice has been made after the expiration of the extended due date. The extended due date is the date recorded on the invoice. It is 74 days from the date of issue of the invoice. This 74 days is made up of 14 days for the initial due date and an additional 60 days from this date for final payment in full to be made. This additional 60 days is what I referred to as the extended due date. The consequences of such payments by registrants are as follows. The monies received by ECHA will not be returned to the registrant. The registrant will have to recommence the registration process and pay a new registration fee while foregoing the initial payment, thus causing additional costs to the registrant. The registrant will suffer a delay in obtaining their registration certificate as the process has to be restarted. Now, let's move on to another important topic related to ECHA invoices. ECHA's tax exemption status. It is important to note that ECHA's activities are exempt from any taxes. Therefore, there is no VAT to be paid by registrants on ECHA invoices. ECHA regularly receives queries from registrants asking for ECHA's VAT number. Please note that ECHA's exemption from VAT means that ECHA has not been attributed a VAT number by the Finnish tax authorities or any other tax authority. Therefore, we cannot provide you with a VAT number. However, ECHA has a Finnish business ID, which is mentioned on the invoice, but please note that this is not a VAT number. ECHA has also been approached by some registrants in a few countries about withholding tax. Again, as ECHA is exempt from any taxes, registrants must pay ECHA's invoices in full and must not withhold any tax from the reach fees and charges. The full explanation on this topic can be found in the list of frequently asked questions, for which you will see the website link at the end of this webinar. Finally, I would like to discuss contact points. As I already mentioned, you should send payment advices to the email address payments@echa.europa.eu. You should inform us through this email address if you have sent a multiple invoice payment or if you notice a mistake with your payment and you want to have it corrected. Please note that the accounting team only deals with payments and therefore cannot answer queries related to the content of invoices or with problems related to submissions. For these types of queries, you should contact the ECHA Reach Help Desk, as they can attribute your question to the most appropriate experts. If we receive these types of questions, we are obliged to advise you to contact the ECHA Help Desk. Thank you for your attention and cooperation. For future webinars, please refer to the ECHA website.